say he was doing? He was opening up the water.
He's going to take him out instead. So you need to ask what he's doing.
So, yeah, my interviewer should.
Oh, some of them, one or two of them are small.
Just mark it down.
Oh, wow.
You had today so far? I had 4.
That looks like a giant thing to roll cigarettes in.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. That's your
It's a
measuring
measuring
device.
box. Yeah.
All right.
Stop the process a lot of places.
Well, I don't know, whatever you want to, I'll leave that up to you.
What I do is I'll get one fish out and I'll just show you what I do. And then after that,
Okay.
we have plenty of fish to work with today. So.
Good idea, and then you can put this together however.
Yeah, through the editing.
How many fish do you have?
Looks like we got, would you say 9? I think. Yeah, I think. Yeah, it looks like 9 fish.
You have waders on?
No, I don't need to get down in there. I can just scoop
okay.
them out.
How many fish do you have so far this year?
286.
All right. Well, that's almost what you had last year, right?
We had 270 last year,
Yeah.
so we're a little bit ahead.
Well, good.
So,
Yeah, someone was saying on a good year you guys had like 1,000 or something like this?
not here. No, they at Rapid River and Kuski and Dvorshak, they get over 1,000.
Oh, wow.
Rapid River's like 4,600, I think. Yeah, 4,600.
Wow. Well, there's a couple of lily ones in there. It looks like trout or
I
something.
got my own little thing. The little one in there's a bull trout.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, a little one, probably 14 inches, 16.
Process you do every day.
Okay, this is a female.
Oh my God.
Okay, if you look on the jaw, males are starting to get what's called a kype on them. And it's a secondary sexual characteristic. Females don't get that. They do a little bit, but not like a male does. Right, they get a hook on their top of their jaw.
Did you pick her purposely?
No,
Or you just
random. And she's 87 centimeters.
Oh, Paris, you ought to come over to film and like injecting.
And you injected her?
Right, with erythromycin.
Oh.
It's a broad-spectrum antibiotic for bacterial kidney disease, basically.
Did you say kidney?
Bacterial kidney disease.
Oh, are they prone to that?
Yeah. And because we have 2 different rates that we inject these fish, so I have to mark the upper end ones.
So you marked her to show that she'd been
Right.
injected?
That was the coddle clip and the
Aha.
and then she goes right into the
So
pond.
the reason we dumped the water in there was to
So
take
she'll
that
slide.
So you mark them so you don't do the same one twice.
Well, once the fish are in there, we don't touch them again until we spawn, or we'll separate them out, males and females, and then after that, then we'll touch them again when we spawn.
So these are the fish that you just trapped?
Right.
And every day you do it?
We do it every morning and every evening. And well, more times than that. But we have what little peaks in the run where we'll get more fish in one day. So because the trap is kind of small, I don't like leaving them in there very long. So I take them out. We get a bunch of fish in a day. It's kind of an ongoing process of getting them out.
Is there about 5 or 6 of them?
looks like about 7 more.
Is that about average?
Yeah, I get about 10 a day.
Were you gonna? Oh, it says do another one. I thought he was done. Don't stop.
Okay, probably don't want to stand there because when I
Oh,
turn
okay.
around with a pole, I don't want to hit you.
All right. Well, I'd take my chance.
Yeah, I'll just warn you before I turn around.
Okay. We're good.
Is it possible for someone to catch one of these out in the open water?
Yeah, a lot of they don't feed once they enter fresh water again,
Oh, so you're
But-
real unlikely they just.
but they will strike at lures and flies. This is a big male here. You see, he's got the big kite on
Oh,
him.
sure. How long can they stay out of water?
Oh, probably up to 2.5 minutes or so, without really stressing them too bad. This one's 94 centimeters.
How do you choose that spot to inject?
There's just a real soft spot there. Yeah, really no heavy muscle tissue or anything like that. This one has a gillnet scar on him right there.
Yeah. So you must have chosen that injection because of his size.
Yeah, I have them all
You have them
at
on,
different
yeah,
rates there.
quantity.
Yeah. And if you want to look at this, there's inside the gill there. You see those little white dots in there? Those are parasites, copepods, called Lernia. And all they do is they feed off the blood that flows through the gill tissues there.
So they're attached to the.
Uh-huh.
Is that
Yeah.
a disease problem?
No. When they first enter from salt water, they have what's called sea lice on them. And it's just another parasite. And they can't, the parasite, they can't live in fresh water, so they dump it off, basically. And then these Lernia are freshwater parasites. And they also have leeches too. I'll show you some leeches. Bacterial kidney disease. And what that is it's a bacteria that lives in the kidney of the fish, and what it does is it ties up the fish's immune system.
Uh-huh.
And part of what the bacteria does is it kills the new red blood cells as they're formed in the kidney, and it's really dangerous to the real small fish, the smolts and the fingerlings. And the disease is passed on through the egg of the fish. And so what we try to do is get it knocked down here so that when we handle the eggs and stuff, there's less a chance of it being transmitted from fish to fish. And what the little tiny larvae, when they hatch out, they eat the eggshells sometimes. And that's what the bacteria is on the eggshells, and that's how it gets transmitted.
Oh, yeah.
Is this a healthy waterway? You don't
Yeah.
find a lot of disease.
Very. Yeah, it's pretty sterile. That's when water temperatures start coming up, then the pathogens are able to, they start multiplying faster.
What is the water temperature right now?
This morning at 8 o'clock it was 52. Actually 51.
And
It stays about
within
that.
range.
Yeah. It'll get a little warmer after we start getting some days of sunshine. Yeah.
Has it been real rainy here?
Every day.
Hey, Robbie, would you wait here to hold the camera for a bit?
Not during this process.
Another
Go ahead.
female.
So the caudal clip is to identify.
What rate of injection?
Oh, okay. and
There's two different rates. One at 10 milligrams per milligram. What's that? One at 10 milligrams per kilogram and one at 20 milligrams per kilogram.
So you're experimenting to see the most effective dose.
Right. And also for toxicity test.
Okay.
If they have any nitrogen burns, they get, what happens is the water, as it goes over a spillway of the dams, becomes super saturated with nitrogen. And it's just like a diver getting the bends, and it actually burns their skin. So we keep track of that sort of thing.
Can I if you have John holding the microphone and Ken's talking, are you hearing anything when Ken's saying?
We'll see. Ken's going to be with you, so John can give us a play-by-play.
Oh.
And we'll get a really good sound out of it.
Okay.
Or we can have Ken hold it between his teeth.
Whenever, you want me to go ahead and start anytime here?
Yeah.
Just pause whenever I want?
Yeah.
All right, the fish have just come into the fish trap here, and Ken is now netting the fish out of the trap. Puts the net in the net hanger here. And grabs a fish. This particular fish here is it looks like a jack. Puts it in the measuring box and gets a length on it, and then he is now injecting the fish with erythromycin, which is a drug to help prevent kidney disease that these salmon are highly susceptible to. And we're injecting these fish at two different rates, a high and a low rate. And the high rate, he is clipping, punching the opercle and clipping the upper caudal fin to be able to tell the difference between the two rates. After he gets a measurement on it and everything, he throws it through the tube and into the holding pond, where the fish will be until spawning sometime in late August and early September. And here he is recording the length of the fish.
Oh yeah, you can bring a mic. Did they ever get a fish that's too big for one person to handle?
There are some very large fish. I think the way this is set up here, it's set up for one person to use it. I think one person can handle it. This is a large female here. You can see the possible gaff wound or gill net scar on her there. Again, he's injecting with erythromycin.
Why does he put it right there in that spot?
It's an intraperitoneal injection. It's a nice soft spot right there, and it goes in easy, and the drug gets to the eggs, which is what we want to tail. And again, he's cutting the upper caudal and punching the right opercle.
Why did he punch the gill?
It's kind of an extra mark because sometimes these fish will get a little fungus while they're in the pond.
Mm-hmm.
And if that tail fungus is up, you won't be able to tell was it clipped or just worn. So we do that other clip backup system, correct?
That was 80. What's that? Yeah, 80 something.
Let me go grab that bottle.
What's that?
Let me grab the bottle. You just ran out of 81, 84.
Oh.
Think you get lucky and not have another one? Looks like today approximately 9 fish came up the fish ladder into the trap. Again, he's attempting to net another fish. Looks like he's got one. He's got another small fish here.
Is there one place to pick up a fish that's better than another, obviously?
The tail seems to be the easiest place to grab them. And Chinook are a lot easier to hold on to than steelhead.
Really?
Yeah.
Body shape?
Yeah, the shape of their tail. This fish looks like about 72 centimeters there. Gets the punch on the gill and the clip on the tail. And in the pond. Looks like a little female there.
Get that?
Got it on camera.
Where would they get a gill net scar?
All of the stretch along the Columbia River, around the Dalles, John Day, is just full of them. Hard to say.
How many are left?
There's probably about 2 or 3, and then the bull trout.
If there's some species in there you're not interested in that comes into the trap, what do you do with that?
Everything that's non-Chinook, like bull trout, rainbow, cutthroat, we'll get a measurement on them and try and get a sex, male, female, hard to tell. And then we'll just toss them back in the river and they'll go do whatever. After a little while there, these things get smart and know how to get away from the net. This here looks like a big old male.
$95.
95-centimeter male.
You want to see the leeches? See? Yeah. No. They don't really do it.
Uncle Sam's bring for a pair of scissors for you guys.
Yeah, he's left-handed using right-handed
Oh,
scissors.
yeah. Oh, I didn't notice he's left-handed.
Yeah, both. There's some that are 107, I think this is 107.
So as you hold them, they will?
Oh yeah.
Are these the same leeches they use for medicinal leeches?
Well, for the most part, freshwater leech.
I can get a shot of him. There he is. Oh, my camera won't quite do it.
You got too close?
I got those on my leg swimming in the reservoir, as a matter of fact.
Get sharp with your scissors.
Yeah. You got any tin snips here? They're a nice little female. Yeah. They're very strong fish, and it's easy for them to get away from you like that.
Yeah, I've seen halibut. I haven't seen it, but how they're so damn strong when they come up, hit the deck. I've heard about people getting their arms broken,
Oh,
legs
yeah.
broken from being slapped by a halibut.
A couple 100-pound fish slapping you around.
Yeah.
Too much water noise here? Just can we do, when he's finished there, I want to ask him some questions.
Yeah, I think we should
go
do it.
somewhere else.
Yeah, I think we should do an interview somewhere kind of
You
quiet.
know, you could almost enter the road
with a
facing down
background.
here.
Yeah, but
Or
the stream,
in
some
the,
quieter
in the
place.
building, maybe. Where it's quieter, maybe sit down at a table. Yeah. Or do you want a view
Yeah,
of
you
it?
guys have a table in the.
There's a picnic table right over there.
Oh, yeah.
Now this picture.
It is rolling now. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Can you explain the mechanics of your facility here, how the water comes in and is diverted and what's going on here?
Okay. The water comes in from Walton Creek right here, and then we have an intake upstream, a couple 300 yards up there. And the water comes in through the intake into that tower you can see right there behind you, and goes from the tower through a head box at the upper end of the ponds here, and goes down and comes up from the bottom of the ponds to the fish. And the reasoning for that is so the fish aren't their instinct is to jump at water.
Oh, so you don't want a current.
Right, and so there's no current for them to jump at, and they don't injure themselves jumping in the pond. It comes out of the ponds, into the structure over here, into the trap, and out through the fish ladder back into Walton Creek. Yeah, that's kind of a hard one.
I gotta take him, measure him, and put him back in the water again because we don't keep them.
Are you putting those in Walton Creek or the Locksaw?
Just right upside down.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, that's going on time. Bull trout, all right. What time is the water?
Got a bull trout now. Got a measure and we got to put it back.
Yeah, if you'd like to talk about the bull trout as we do it.
Okay.
You know, and nurse and stuff.
If I get that
We got all the salmon out of the trap now, and there's a resident fish in there, a bull trout. It's a lot smaller, so it'll be a little more difficult to catch here. The bull trout is a migratory fish. It comes up into our trap like the salmon. So, being that the bull trout is a species of concern, we will go ahead and measure the fish and try and get sex on it, and we'll run it back up into Walton Creek above our weir so it can go up and spawn naturally. It's nice to get one of those big huge ones in here.
Oh, I know.
I want to say hi to my mom. If there's not too much noise, I'd like to stand there and ask you again the mechanics of the water flow here because it involves that structure. Can you explain the mechanics of the water flow through the system here?
All right, we receive the water for our facility here from Walton Creek, which is a tributary to the Locksaw River. Approximately 300 yards upstream here in Walton Creek is our head box, or our intake for the hatchery. The water comes down into the head box and then into this large cement structure you see right here. And from there, the water goes up to the upper end of the holding pond into another head box, and then the water goes down and comes up through the bottom of the adult pond. And the reason for that is so these chinook have an instinct to jump at water and current, and if the water's coming from the bottom, they can't jump out of the water and injure themselves on the side of the pond and stuff. And the water comes out the pond through the fish trap here that you just saw, and out of the fish trap through the ladder, which we are standing directly above, and back into Walton Creek. And right here is the weir across the river, and the fish come up Walton Creek. They can't go up the weir, so they have to go up the fish ladder into our trap.
Oh, so this is actually where your chinook come up here.
Yeah.
They voluntarily don't go up the Locksaw.
Correct.
They
And that,
change their course and come up Walton.
yeah, and that's the only fish. There was never a wild spawning, or in recent history, a wild spawning population of chinook in Walton Creek.
There has not been.
Has not been. And all these fish that are coming back are fish that we released from this hatchery, so we know that they are hatchery fish, and we're able to keep all of them that come back.
You know that because there haven't been any wild.
Correct, yeah.
So they're remembering. They're coming up the Locksaw and
Right.
remembering that Walton Creek is here.
Right.
Is the temperature, is Walton Creek colder?
It tends to run a few degrees colder probably than the main river. see that the line kind of across the river there?
Yeah.
That's, we have another weir that we put across there.
Mm-hmm.
It's the main weir that keeps any fish from going up there, so all the fish have to come up here. But we found, well, last year it blew out. The
High water started. I was thinking asking you first how the fish get up here rather than.
About ready to take the mic for a while?
Sure.
Well, we'll
Okay.
switch off and stuff. You could tell about this one if you want. You know,
The water.
yeah, how the water
Yeah,
comes
since
in
you've
stuff.
done it twice already, maybe
Yeah.
you're getting tired of
Facing
saying
the
it.
camera, face the water.
Face this way.
You know, face what you're talking about.
Yeah, kind of face him and point off this way so he can see where you're pointing before, so he can turn the camera that direction.
Pointing and all that stuff.
Okay.
Because I was pointing, he was facing that way and I was pointing that way.
Oh.
He's going.
Whenever you're ready, I guess.
Whenever you guys are ready.
Okay.
Okay.
How does
100 yards upstream here. Okay, and then it goes into this control box, this big cement control box right here. And then from there it goes over a big spillway, so it creates like a hydrostatic pressure.
that's inside there?
Right, that's inside of that box. Then the water from there makes a big circle around us here to this auxiliary pump station here.
This is underground?
This is underground. And then from there the water goes back up towards the cabin and then into the head box that's right at the head of the spawning shelter here, at the head of the adult pools. Then from there the water comes through the adult ponds, then out the adult ponds, and then back into the trap, and then from the trap it runs the fish ladder into Walton Creek again.
Does it loop?
It does a big loop,
Facility and in the corner?
right, and then back out again.
Is it pumped through? Does it make a current through the tanks?
Mm-hmm. It's I'm not sure how fast the current, but there is a current there. Yeah. You know, any idea?
That it come up the water came up?
Well, it yeah. The water comes up from the bottom.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called an upweller.
Okay.
Water comes out of the bottom and then circulates and then it drains out on this end of it here.
And so after the fish are processed, what we just saw you doing, then what happens to them?
Okay, then the fish are put into the holding ponds where they'll stay until the end of August into the middle of September until they're ready to spawn. And then what we do is we'll sex the fish and separate the males on one side and the females on the other side. Then we take then what we'll do is we'll crowd the fish up again and check a female to make sure that she's ready to spawn. If she's ready to spawn, then we take one male and then that female. We'll kill both fish. We'll kill the female, take the eggs out of her, and then milk the male for his sperm into the bucket with the female's eggs, and then they're fertilized from there, and then we water harden them for an hour. Then water hardening is a process that the egg undergoes so that it doesn't get what's called polyspermy, where more than one sperm is in the egg at a time.
Something that would happen.
Right, which could happen. Well, actually, anytime an egg, salmon eggs touches water, it undergoes that process. Right. Yeah. And then from there, we take the eggs back down to Clearwater Fish Hatchery, where we place them in what's called a heath tray, where we incubate them until they hatch. And then from there, they go into more troughs, basically, until they grow into a large enough size that we can take them outside. Then we take the fish outside, and they're raised there for 2 or 3 months or so. Then from there, they're brought back up here again, where they're put into the big rearing pond up here, so that they can imprint on this water.
I wonder if they would.
Right. Then when they go to smolt, they're imprint on Walton Creek water here, and then we release them, and then they travel downstream the next spring during the freshets.
What does smolt mean?
It's a physiological change that the fish undergoes to prepare itself to enter salt water.
And they do that.
They do that on the way down the river.
What do you do with the fish after they've been killed, the fish bodies?
Well, because they've been injected with medicine, we can't give them to people to eat. So we either put them back in the river again, or we put them in the land disposal.
Okay, they're not necropsied?
Well, we take tissue samples of every one to check for diseases.
So they're sort of recycled?
Right. Well, in nature, when the salmon spawns, then the carcasses, they're called kelts, line the banks of the river. When the eggs hatch in the early spring or in early spring, and they emerge from the gravel, that's what the little fish eat, are on the kelts of the dead salmon.
Would you put them in the water right here?
No, we try to distribute them around up into the upper tributaries.
Attracting predators.
Right. Well, they're a source of food for bears and coyotes and about anything.
And these, all you have here are Chinook salmon.
Right. That's right.
Can you explain the classification of fish? What is a Chinook salmon? How is it related to trout?
Okay, a Chinook salmon is all trout are in the family Oncorhynchus, and then you have different species. You have Chinook salmon. There's 5 different Pacific salmon, and then you also have, those are all what they call anadromous fish. They all go to sea. They spawn in fresh water. The young are born in fresh water. They go to sea to grow up and get big, and then they come back and they spawn again. That's called an anadromous fish. Then you also have rainbow trout. And you have cutthroat trout, which is all in the same family, Oncorhynchus. And you also have bull trout, and that's in a different family, Salvelinus, which is in the same, like lake trout and brook trout are all the same. So there's 2 different families. There's a char family and a trout family.
Discussing that on the way earlier.
Right.
We were sort of close.
Yeah.
So why is it that you only have Chinook salmon here?
This program is part of what's called the Lower Snake River Compensation Plan, and it's designed to develop enough fish, Chinook salmon, to have a sport fishery. Where there used to be hundreds of thousands of these fish every year come up before all the dams were put in the Snake River and in the Bonneville River. And with all that habitat loss and destruction from poor logging practices, land use practices, that sort of thing, this program has been put into effect as a compensation act for that.
Has it been long enough for you to see any results?
This is our first year that we're getting fish back that we released from here. All these fish that we have here are fish that we released 4 and 5 years ago.
So up till this year, you had to have a diversion.
Right.
Because they wouldn't have
Right.
centered.
There was probably a very small wild run that went up Walton Creek, but the numbers were probably so small that didn't amount to anything.
Has it lived up to your expectations on quantity this year?
I'm not getting your question, son.
Oh,
Is it possible to get
sorry.
yeah,
Maybe I should
Oh,
hold this.
yeah.
Okay.
Has it lived up to your expectations on the number of fish?
Well, this is the first year that we've gotten anything back from our own releases, so we can't really tell yet.
You didn't know what to expect.
Right. We have more fish than what we had last year already, which is a good sign. And a lot of it has to do with the water year. When you have a very strong water year in the spring, then
Which we have.
right, then you're likely to get more fish back.
So ultimately, people will be fishing for these right here in the
That's
Lochsa.
that is the whole goal of this program, is so that we can have a sport fishery in the Lochsa River.
Will they be that? People will be catching fish that big?
Sure, you bet.
They'll be here then,
You
won't
bet,
they?
yeah. It brings a lot of money in tourism and outfitting and that sort of thing. There's a lot of money to be involved.
But this is still a long-range project.
A
You'll
very
be here for a
long-range
while.
project. You bet.
How did you find yourself here?
We got.
Maybe you could do the trick
Okay.
about. Okay.
Okay. How did you wind up here?
Well, I'm a student at the University of Idaho, a fisheries student, and I applied for a summer job. And with Idaho Fish and Game, they have summer work programs for students, And so I applied, and this is how I got here.
It's a great job. Was there a lot of competition?
Yeah, there's quite a few entries, applicants, and my boss does a lot of screening to pick out what he feels would be the best people for the job. So I was just lucky, and I have enough I've done a lot of work with salmon before, so I think that's probably one of the reasons why I got hired.
Are you a master's candidate?
No, I haven't got my bachelor's degree yet.
Well, this is a wonderful spot. It's a great job.
Oh, I love it up here. Yeah, it's a very good experience. University of Idaho.
Okay, you're on.
Hi. This is Ken Lau and his wife Mary. Ken is a student at the University of Idaho, and he's spending his summer here at
Powell Satellite
Powell
Station, fish trap.
Can you explain to me, tell me when this started and the purpose of this facility right here?
Okay, the final construction was done in October 1988. The purpose of this facility is to provide a sport fishery for Chinook salmon in the Lochsaw and Clearwater River.
And, excuse me, before you down.
Yeah.
The Chinook are an endangered species right now?
Actually, there is only one subspecies of the Chinook that's endangered right now, and that is the fall Chinook in the Snake River system.
So they're not related to the Chinook that you're...
The difference between those Chinook and the ones that we have here is that the time that they enter the river, the Columbia River itself. These are all spring Chinook here, which means they come over Bonneville Dam very early in the spring, and they spend the whole summer getting up here to spawn. Fall Chinook, however, don't have that much time to make it all the way up here into the pristine drainages where their spawning habitat. So they only make it into the bigger rivers. And the reason why they're on the Endangered Species Act is because of the dams that have gone in on the Snake River and on the Columbia River have destroyed the spawning habitat for these fish. And so their numbers have declined dramatically over the last 10, 15 years.
How many dams do these Chinook that you have here have to go over before they get here?
9.
It would be every dam on the Columbia, wouldn't it?
Every dam between here and the mouth of the Columbia River, basically. I think it's 9 or 10 dams.
So every one of those dams must have fish ladders or some way.
They have fish passage facilities on each one, a big ladder so that the adults can come up and then over the dam.
From what I've read, am I right that they're not all that successful? It seems to me that overall the population is still really...
Sure. Where they're finding out that they're having a lot of problems on is getting the smolts downstream, not necessarily getting the adults back upstream. As the smolts go downriver, traditionally it took 20 to 25 days for them to go from like here all the way to the mouth of the Columbia. Now they're finding it's taking them months to get there because they go into these large pools behind the reservoirs and they get lost, basically because there's not enough current for them to follow, or they get eaten by predators. And if that isn't enough, a very significant number of them get chewed up by the turbines going as the water passes through the dam. And the Corps of Engineers hasn't come up with a successful means of passing these juvenile fish across the dams without them getting eaten.
Do you find evidence of that in the Chinook that you have here, of the damaged fish?
We get a lot of fish back that have nitrogen burns on them, and that's caused by supersaturation. When they have to spill water over the spillway, the water becomes supersaturated with nitrogen and it burns their skin. We find a lot of that here. We find a lot of gaff hook wounds from people gaffing them out of the river, gill net wounds and that sort of thing.
What's the most unusual fish as far as injuries that you've had?
Well, I have a fish in right now that doesn't have any eyes. Basically, the whole top of its head is gone, and it doesn't have any eyes.
What does that say about how they make their way up the river?
It's pretty incredible. A lot of instinct, I think, goes into it.
I'm temporarily out of questions.
Hit a blank place.
Yeah.
What's the cantaloupe for?
Oh, Yeah, for the birds. Yeah.
A little too right for us.
Great. I love feeding the birds. We feed them at home.
Yeah.
They eat 10 pounds in what, 2 weeks?
10 pounds in a week. Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
A lot of birds.
We're generous.
It's more expensive to keep than chickens.
Yeah.
Robbie, you guys, what am I missing? 'Cause I'm not sure.
On
I
what?
was going to ask you if we're going to do the life cycle. I was going
okay.
to start. That was interesting to me when you said that they do part of their cycle here and then they're transported to another hatchery and then they come back.
Okay, what happens is we spawn the adults here, and then we take the eggs back to the hatchery where we raise them until they are what's called a pre-smolt. Then we bring them up here and put them in our big ponds. And during that time, while they're going through this smoltification process, is when they imprint on the water, on the Walton Creek water, and then we release them from here, and then they return to here.
Okay. So they're released here and they make their way down the Lochsaw.
Right.
Let me see if I'll do this right, to the Clearwater. And from the Clearwater to
Into the Snake River.
the Snake, and then the Columbia.
Right, and then from the Columbia Ocean, they go out the mouth of the Columbia. They've tracked them up the coast of British Columbia, and then as they go, they get bigger and bigger as they go. They eat a lot of shrimp and copepods and that sort of thing.
How big would they be when they're released from right here?
Approximately about 6 inches.
Then by the time they reach the mouth of the Columbia, they're probably 8 to 10 inches long, probably.
So
they do
they're
grow
eating all the way down
all
there.
the way down. They go up the coast of British Columbia, and then up the coast of Alaska, out the Aleutian Islands, and basically make big circles out there in the ocean. And Chinook salmon have a 4 or 5 year life cycle, and depending on genetics, a whole range of things, genetics, availability of food, water temperatures, that sort of thing, then they come back after 4 or 5 years.
Some are 3-year-olds.
Yeah, it's variable, but there's a lot. Predominantly, it's 4 and 5 year olds.
Their diet must change a lot during this cycle, from the cold water up in this mountain stream to the ocean.
Yeah, up here they're going to feed on insects, small, based on their size. As they get bigger, they're going to have a larger prey.
And what do they eat when they're in the ocean off the coast of British Columbia? What would they do?
Well, they're starting to eat smaller fish, a lot of shrimp. Fact is, that's where they get their red coloring in their flesh, is from the pigments of the shrimp that they eat. And they utilize all kinds of food. Mostly, once they get bigger, they mostly eat fish. Yeah, they're definitely a piscivorous fish.
Is it understood how they can go from saltwater to freshwater? How their bodies can make that?
Well, there's a lot of complex physiological changes that they undergo, because they have to go from a hypotonic solution in freshwater to hypertonic.
That's related to the density.
Right.
Of the
Well,
water.
the amount of salts and that sort of thing in the water, and they have to be able to regulate that in their bodies, and they have different physiological means of doing that. They have what's called chloride cells in their gills, and once they enter salt water, then these number of cells become more of them, so they're able to regulate that sort of thing.
And you are John Rankin, and where do you work?
I work at the Clearwater Fish Hatchery, located in Osaka, Idaho.
Osaka.
Osaka.
Is this part of your job to come up here and supervise this, or do you have a similar job down there?
Yeah, I have a house on the station. I live at the hatchery, and my title is a fish culturist, which is the beginning permanent position in the hatchery system. And I'm assigned to the satellite hatcheries this year. I have another supervisor above me, and we just kind of monitor what's going on up here, keep track of fish numbers, and when spawning starts and all that kind of stuff. And Ken's the person up here doing all the work.
So you have a bachelor's in fisheries biology?
My bachelor's is in biology.
Mm-hmm.
Just-
But you're a fish person.
Yeah.
Do you fish?
Oh, you bet. As much as possible.
What do you catch in here?
I haven't fished the Lochsaw much, but there's some nice cutthroat fishing in the Lochsaw, and some bull trout and rainbow, and I don't know what else there is in there.
Do you fish here?
Oh yeah, every night I try to.
Do you?
At least, yeah.
You fly fisherman?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it's very good fishery. This year there's been a lot of rain, and so there's been a lot of food in the water, and so it hasn't been all that good, but it's really good fishing.
Do you fish too?
Yeah, I fish too.
Do you?
It's,
Do you fly fisherman?
no, I'm getting to learn that though.
Mhm.
It's really fun.
It's an art, isn't it?
It is. It is a real art.
What are your ambitions? What does a person do after?
Well, my ambitions from here is to gain as much experience as I can, and in the fisheries business. And with this job, I get to see not only the collection and the spawning and that sort of thing, but I also get to see the husbandry practices that go on at the hatchery itself. And with all this experience, I hope to get a job with either a private consulting firm or working like at Idaho Fish and Game, doing the same thing. I really enjoy my work.
Are there? Yeah.
What you feed them,
Yeah, what do you feed them? And, yeah.
how many you have, and things like that. And then you've got the dying part taken care of.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, anytime you're ready to go.
Okay, so you're a Chinook salmon, and you've spent 3 years in the Pacific, and you just came in the mouth of the Columbia. Are you hungry?
No, actually, once salmon enter fresh water again, they don't eat anything. They do all their traveling on just the energy reserves that they have, and very later on in the season, they actually start metabolizing their own body tissues.
That's when their
Right.
tissue deteriorates.
Right,
so
they
bad.
start looking real bad then.
How do they find their way back to the same stream?
Well, they don't actually have the exact mechanism for that yet. They have shown that they home in on the scent of the water. They also have been shown to use magnetic keys. As they travel through the magnetic lines of the earth, they're able to navigate that way. There's a whole myriad of things. I think they can navigate by where the sun's at, position of the sun in the sky, the stars, everything basically.
Are people studying that now? Maybe at your university, are there some studies?
There's not any of that particular study that I know of that's going on at the University of Idaho, but I know that they do a lot of research at the University of Washington and Oregon State University on homing mechanisms.
You were talking about professions in fisheries. Is there been a trend in this country towards more awareness of fisheries and that kind of?
Well, as the country becomes more concerned with environmental issues, then I've seen that there's been a lot more focus on fisheries and wildlife and that sort of thing in general. And with the hatchery work in the private industry is going to become very big. As the population grows, there's going to be more demand for fish. And
As a food source, do you see that?
And so that the only way we're going to be able to meet that demand is through farming, husbandry practices. And Idaho does a lot of that. We raise, I think the last figure I saw was 95% of all the rainbow trout that you eat in restaurants across the United States are grown in Idaho.
In private hatcheries. I'm sorry, were you going to say
No,
something? This facility here seems almost secret. There's no sign out there. If you didn't just happen to come along here, doesn't it seem? Is there? Do you welcome visitors, or is there any planned public relations to?
Well, yeah, we definitely welcome visitors. The more people that are aware about this, the more the public can be involved and help out on the issue of the salmon.
Yeah.
And as far as a sign out there, we have one right here, but it would be a good idea to have one out there on the road.
Do you have tours or any specific public activities at where you work?
Yeah, we have a tour guide at the main hatchery, and there's specific times, 3 times a day, that tours are given.
Great. Yeah, that's great. Okay. Yeah. You good
Mary, you said you were a registered nurse.
Yeah.
Where do you work?
At St. Joseph's Regional Medical Center in Lewiston, Idaho.
What unit do you work in?
I'm working in the critical care area.
How long have you been there?
Been there 3 years in August.
Oh, and you went to school in Wyoming and came right up here to work?
No, I went to school in Wyoming and roundabout way ended up in Idaho with Ken.
How do you like nursing?
I really enjoy it. It's a very challenging, interesting field.
Did you find that it was scary to work in critical care at first?
At first, just in general nursing, it's scary because you're taking care of real people. Then you feel more comfortable, and then in critical care, there's sicker people, so you go through that phase again where you're getting scared, but now you feel quite comfortable.
Did you feel you were prepared, your education was up to it?
Yes, in a overall broad sense, it kind of covered everything as far as four-year universities go.
You have a BS?
Yes, yes, I have a bachelor's in nursing.
Did you have a lot of in-hospital training?
In Wyoming, it's a little difficult. They try and squeeze in as much as they can in a rural area.
How did you wind up in Idaho?
Met my husband in Wyoming, and we went to San Diego, and he went to go to school at the University of Idaho, and here we are.
Were you in school in Wyoming also?
Yeah, I went to school there for a year, and then because of lack of money, I wasn't able to go back. So I went in the Navy and went around the world a couple times, and then was stationed in San Diego, and I went through a special Navy program to prepare me for college, basically. And when I came up to the University of Idaho in the NROTC unit, and because of the dropbacks in military size and that sort of thing, I dropped out of that program, and so here I am, basically.
You're a non-typical student, they call it?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Non-traditional, right? So you had a big gap. You started school, and were you interested in the wildlife and the fishing before you met him?
Oh,
Tell the truth.
kind of like camping.
This is her kind of camping,
this is my
where we
kind
have
of
a
camping,
house
kitchen,
Right.
heat,
and a shower,
a
and
nice
that sort of
bathroom
thing.
with a shower.
And when a butterfly comes down,
That's
your
right.
wildlife.
That's as good as it gets for me.
Yeah.
When did you start fishing?
Oh, I started fishing when I was in Wyoming. It's just got introduced with wildlife and things like that. And so I really enjoy the fishing part. It's after you catch the fish that I don't enjoy.
So who cleans the fish?
I do. Yeah.
Well, you're an expert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Robbie?
I missed some of the questions again. Have we asked how many of the hatchlings make it to the ocean and back?
Didn't, did we? Let's see. How can
We
get
don't
How
really
many
have-
make it down, and then
We
of
don't really
those, how
have
many
the-
come back?
Yeah, how would you know?
We're
A
sitting
tenth
at
of a
about
percent
yeah.
is a return.
Have you ever had any birds of prey come and try to take the fish out of your pens?
Some good stuff.
When we have the little ones up here, then we have a kingfisher. We've had a
Yeah.
kingfisher up here, and an osprey, and I've seen osprey take fish out of the lock saw here. But these fish are pretty good size. They take a big bird to nab one of those.
It's not something you feel you have to
No,
protect them
not here.
against.
Not the adults, no.
Do you have any idea what percentage of fish come back of the ones that you release?
Well, these fish were all released in October '88, and we released 300,000 smolts at that time. And so far we're sitting at almost 300 fish returned, so we've got about a 1% return rate.
Is that what you expected?
It's probably better than what we expected. This seems like the normal is about 1/10 of 1% is what you get back.
Ask John again about the where the small migrate, the currents.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
Predators,
Go
bulls.
ahead.
There's a lake create an obstacle.
Oh,
pools behind the dam.
what are the obstacles to the fish as they travel down the Columbia or the other?
Well, when a
dams?
smolt migrates, the current pushes the fish down. They don't turn and swim downstream. The current pushes them down. When they hit these large pools behind the dams, there's no current. So they start swimming in circles trying to orient themselves to downstream, and that just opens themselves up for predator prey type
So,
stuff.
what would they find? What would be down there as a predator?
The big thing now is squawfish. They have a program right now to catch squawfish, and I'm not. I
It's
think
$3 a
you get $3
squawfish.
a squawfish.
Oh, there's a bounty on
Yeah,
squawfish.
Bounty on squawfish.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one way to help reduce the loss of the smolts on their way down.
So this circling behavior is sort of a distress thing that signals that they're vulnerable to be preyed on?
I think that they just get lost,
Yeah, they just-
basically.
So they're just the
And-
amount of time they're in there makes them
and
vulnerable.
sure, and when
And the
you
warmer
have-
water doesn't help as far as disease.
You mean the water there's warmer because it's slower by the dams?
Yeah. And the water quality also on the way down has to do with it too. The water gets real turbid, and so these smolts can't see the predators that they lie in wait for them, basically, and they're just easy pickings.
Are there still any native rights as far as fishing down there for the Indians to fish?
Yeah, they still have a season usually every year. In the lower stretches of the Columbia, the Nez Perce are allowed to gill net. And I'm not sure the exact area around John Day, the Dalles, around that.
They'd be netting the ones that
The
are
adults
coming
back, and they do steelhead and salmon
Mm-hmm.
almost year round, gill netting.
But does that make any dent in the population, that fishing?
Yeah, it definitely does.
You're laughing.
I'm not
Well-
sure the exact numbers they take, but it's hard for a fish to get through all those gill nets.
You mean that just anything that stops them is a
Sure.
problem?
And also you find that when they're in the ocean, that there are a lot of gill nets, not necessarily gill nets, but Japanese trawlers with what they call long lining and that
Okay.
sort of thing, and that's where they really hammer a lot of fish out there. And there's a big commercial fishery that goes on every year right outside the mouth of the Columbia, and they just snag them up by the seinefuls, before they even get a chance to come back. So
I'm hearing a little bit of politics coming into the fisheries.
this whole thing is a lot of politics. We find that it's a big numbers game. We try to get as many fish as we can back to so we can culture them and release them. And you have all sorts of other groups that want fish also. The tribe fisheries, and you got the private fishermen and the commercial fishermen, and it's a big pie out there, and these fish get divided in very small pieces. There's so many other interests.
It sounds like water rights. There's just so much water and a lot of people wanting it.
Yeah, Dworshak Reservoir is being lowered right now as to help flush smolts downriver. And of course the tourism industry doesn't like that, because you're leaving hundreds of feet of bank exposed and that sort of thing, and when there's low water years, there just isn't enough water to flush these fish and still have irrigation and other uses for it. So it's a big political minefield out there, and really and you just got to try to, these fish are just dodging these mines, really. So.
Does it relate to the environmental and industrial dichotomy that?
Oh, sure. The Endangered Species Act is a big weapon that really the only thing we have to try to save the natural resources. The forest industry wants to clear cut everything that they can, and within reason. And when National Marine Fisheries says you have an endangered species, then it kind of wakes everybody up and says, okay, now we got to do something to help these species out.
Have logging practices been a problem here in the Lochsa with siltation?
Well,
We've had some problems here in Walton Creek on large rainstorms. We'll get a lot of siltation in and stuff.
I don't think, I'm not for sure, but I don't think we have as much problem up here as could be. The salmon river drainage has a lot of problems with siltation. And anytime you get silt in the water, that just takes away from the spawning habitat. Because these fish, build a big red when they spawn, and they deposit their eggs in the gravel. And the eggs are dependent on water flowing through the gravel to provide oxygen and nutrients. And when silt just basically forms a big mud cap over it, and they all smother basically.
Would these fish, what would happen to them if you weren't here? Would many of them die, or how would they make it without your hatchery?
It would just be like in nature, basically. They travel upstream, find big pools and riffles, and then they wait until they're ready to spawn, and they pair up and spawn naturally.
So they would still go up Walton Creek?
They would go up as far as they could.
There wouldn't be as many going up Walton Creek. The reason there are so many in Walton Creek is because of our releases from the hatchery.
So
Without that, there may only be 2 or 3 pair at the most going up Walton Creek.
I'm interested in, this is your first summer here, and you've been here
since June 9th.
Okay.
That's when we put the weir in.
Has anything happened here that really surprised you?
Bear fishing in the
Yeah. I had a bear down in the jump pools the other night that was fishing for, trying to catch salmon.
Is that where we watched you jump pools? Is that where you...
That's where the fish come up before they go into the
Okay.
there.
A black bear?
Yeah. And I have wild deer and elk in here all the time, and moose and that sort of thing. I expected all of that. But really, what really surprises me working here is the people that come to visit here really don't know anything about salmon. They don't know what this is about. They don't have any idea about any of this. And that kind of surprised me.
But they must be interested enough to ask, to try to find out.
Yeah, I give tours all the time. I'm swamped. I'm not swamped. I really enjoy, talking to people and that sort of thing. So, but I find them here from 7:30 in the morning to, I've had people here late as 10:30 looking at fish. And I've had several families that come back 4 and 5 days in a row just to watch the fish, and their kids really enjoy it. So.
Do you find that the kids are more fish oriented or more fish aware than the adults?
No, not really, not necessarily. I find that a lot of the adults are just astounded. They're really just amazed.
They are astounding fish.
Yeah, they are really. And once I begin to tell them, how far these fish have actually traveled and what they go through to get here, then I think they really begin to appreciate, how, what nature's really all about here.
I think there is more of an awareness of mammal type cuddly animals than animals that live in the water. Slimy fish, right? And I hadn't thought of it, but you're right. There is really. I have to admit that I didn't know. Everything you've told me is news to me.
Yeah, I think there is a big emphasis on, bears and eagles and that sort of thing, and I think it's just not necessarily ignorance, but just not knowing about it. I think you just kind of take it for granted. You go to a restaurant and order salmon, and you don't think about where it came from and what's involved in it.
Where does the salmon come from that we eat?
Well, there's commercial fisheries for salmon, Alaska and along Oregon coast and Washington coast and that sort of thing. But a lot of salmon that we eat in restaurants comes from overseas. They raise salmon exclusively, Atlantic salmon in Norway and Denmark and those countries. They raise them in big net pens out in the ocean and commercially, and that's where we get a lot of our fish from. Salmon.
Is there any way to tell by a can?
No, not really.
Would there be a difference in the quality of the fish?
I don't think you could probably tell, actually.
Have you asked the question, why isn't there a sign on the highway?
Oh, yeah.
I did.
Why isn't there?
I'll put that on my to-do list.
Because we are going to film, as we come up, all the signs, and nowhere.
there's some big ones in there.
Oh, there's fishing down there in the back. And what I'll do is, I'm going to try and see if between Paris and I we can edit this and maybe get something ready within 2 weeks. And then drop a line or give you a call over here and bring it over and have you view it before we do it, so that if there's anything that you do or don't want, you're going to have time. But I think there's only good. And then I think we'll let us dub it, and I'll bring it over for your use or this or here. Okay? So if I do bring one over, dub one for yourself or something like this for your own family.
Yeah, I will.
Okay. But I think that would be fun, and I really, really appreciate this. I think a lot of people would be interested. And I was telling John I smell this Jerry Johnson quite often when I mushroom. I really do. I mushroom. And so I, especially in the fall, I come to the sand down here, careful out there. So I know it's like that. I was in a safe at Nashville because the fish creek was really short there. Because what? I don't know.
Look at his eyes.
His eyeball.
His eyes. We're starting to get them. That's because the kidney ceases to function whenever things really bad. So they'll just quit there.
Now, I don't know if it was proper measure somewhat, but somebody was telling me that they really don't feel too much. I mean, the sheds they're in is pretty
No, I
bad.
would not. I wouldn't think that they probably would.
Because how could they stand it otherwise? But some of them are really bad.
Yeah, it's
They all ran down at the other end.
Real bad. And he's staying away,
BKD?
Yeah.
which is
That bacterial kidney disease.
Oh.
fish right here is sick.
This one right here.
This one right here, it's got the BKD. See his red eyes? How red they are?
Oh yeah.
And how the eyes are kind of bulging out of the head.
Uh-huh.
That's called exophthalmia. And what it is, the kidney isn't working anymore, so the fish can't get rid of the water in its body, so it's swelling inside.
Now, the fish has to be in a little bit of pain because it has moved.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
It's staying away from the others after the kids.
But that fish might live until this morning. It's hard to say.
Do you have, I mean, what triggers it? What, do they have some kind of
Is that a
behavior
bull
that
trout?
all of a sudden you know they're ready to spawn in a day or two?
Okay, what will happen is the eggs in the female will start to descend out of what's called a skein. And that's when they're ripe, when they start coming down. And then what we do is we'll hold the fish up and feel its belly, female, and you'll be able to tell whether all the eggs have descended or not. And if it has, then it's ready to spawn.
Do they all do it pretty much within a few days of each other?
Within 2 or 3 weeks of each other.
Oh,
It's
okay.
pretty much, most of them are within 2 weeks of each other. They'll be ready to go.
When do you think that will be?
End of August and the first couple weeks of September.
Okay. Because I'm going to try and get back to the next
Okay. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, it won't be until the end of August. Start of August.
Same one for the
Yeah.
BKD. And what out there with the after but it's
And it'll spawn out its eggs will be good if it's a female.
uh-huh.
I guess I needed a filter on this to really
Oh,
cut
like
the
a,
thickest bear, but I got some.
Now,
Boy, that one doesn't have hardly any head at all. That's the one with no eyes?
yeah.
Wow.
I think Sean wants to take some pictures with the door open also. So I'm going to go get her, okay?
Boy, it doesn't.
Is that all right, Paris?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
focus.
You could,
What are those?
Sean has a whole bag of lovely huckleberries, but I thought the cameraman should have a handful. Love. I would like to get a logo on that truck
Yeah.
and on the bridges, okay?
Right.
You should have one more handful.
Yeah. That'd be good. Let's see.
over there, and it's pretty good. I mean, it's flat. I mean, it's got the sides and all the sides, you know, and that. I've been in the water, but it looks interesting. I mean, it's really well done. It's just up there in that corner there.
Oh, really? Another pond?
Oh, good. Nothing in it, it's just the This is a real beautiful planet we live on, you know?
Yeah, it is.
Oh my gosh, did my sound go over on that camera?
Yeah, it did. Okay, roll 'em. I can't. Oh yeah. God, just a minute. My viewfinder just kind of drifted all over the place. Damn, I can't keep my viewfinder level.
Oh, then there's a little tree growing up.
Okay, hold it, because my camera hasn't started yet or something. Okay. Okay, now you can drive by it. I hope that's focused.
Oh, and then you get the blue over here.
Blue.
Yeah, the heart.
No. Yeah, that's all I've got is guardrail.
Oh, I'm sorry, am I driving too slow?
I don't know.
I don't know either. You know, last week it seemed to imply last week, Mother, that they didn't get enough visitors, and this week he seems to say,
Okay, hold. Yeah.
this week just started today, didn't it? That's right.
Okay, go on.
Don't you want to zoom in on each one individually? No. Well, see, we could edit it out, Mother.
Each sign.
Well, the ducks.
Okay, I got it.
If he zooms in on the ducks, the Army Corps of Engineers.
The ducks. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, hold
Yeah.
it.
So you get all the small print there.
I should have a rotating seat.
Real directors do have them. But
Don't make him laugh while he's shooting.
Okay.
do you have the fade out?
You want me to fade out?
I want you to fade out.
Well, honey, I kind of
Because otherwise we lose 3 inches.
Why is that?
Okay.
see any fish?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
Those are a couple nice ones.
Yeah, these are cutthroats.
Little thing.
Are there cutthroats other than West Slope?
Yeah,
or-
there's
Oh, there's still a lot.
Yellowstone cuts, and there's like 3 or 4 different little subspecies of them.
Show me what you were telling us today, the lateral line.
Okay, see the line that goes right across
Oh.
there?
I noticed
Mhm.
that.
That's the lateral line.
Where they had the sensors.
Mm-hmm. And they also have nose, a pair of nares there also.
And if you grip them right here,
Yeah, yeah, you can. Yeah, on smaller fish, it isn't that big a deal. But,
If you grip them there, you could what?
well, it's
Curl
there's
up.